Hello, my friends, and welcome to a new behind the scenes episode. Today, I want to speak about good and bad habits for creatives. Usually these videos are a Patreon reward, but this one is public because I think it's helpful to a lot of people. My name is Olivio. I'm a professional designer from Vienna, Austria, and let's get started. So the first part, and I say this a lot, but I can't stress it enough, is to stay active. So if possible, do something every day, even if it's just a small thing. There is always time to be creative, take some notes, look at some old works, be inspired by some books or other sources. So you don't have to invest specific time into it. You can, for example, on the way to work, read about another artist that you like, look at their works, or look through your old work, stuff like that. Another part of staying active is don't force yourself to be creative, because this will just block your creativity. If creativity comes to you, if you have some great ideas, that is great, note them down or execute them if you have time to at that moment. Otherwise, you can find inspiration and creative sources from a lot of different sources, and you can always, and this is the next point, circle back to your old work. So the thing with creativity is that the first ideas you get are probably not the best ideas. So try to really, push out all the ideas that you have. And when it starts to get really hard to come up with new ideas, you know that you hit a border where real creativity is actually starting. So when it gets really hard to come up with something new, you know that this is probably something not everybody has thought about in the first moment, but you also come to the point where you don't even have any new ideas, everything is just bad, and you have this kind of block in your head, you can't get any other creative thoughts, and this is when you should circle back to your old works, improve upon them, look at them, and just see. For example, when you look at old works, you can see things that speak to you, that look alive, that look authentic, and you immediately know that this is something good. And others, they just feel dead and useless and pointless, and they didn't just work as well as you thought. So you can sort them out or analyze them why they didn't work. So this is really good in the situations when creativity is not around. Another thing is you should always do something even if it is bad. So even if you are at a point where you're not in the mood and you don't feel creative and you don't feel like exercising, still do something. Or if you have a work and you know it doesn't take a long time, just finish it, even if it's bad. If you have an idea and you think, hey, this could be a good idea, but right now I just don't have the creativity, just do the work or note it down. And at least then you have created that idea and you can circle back to it, pick it up at a later point if you still think it's a good idea. So don't let yourself, don't let yourself being held back from exercising something just because you think the result might be bad. And of course, like I said before, learn from your old works and sort them out. That's also important to sharpen your senses of what you personally think is important to you, or what you think are good works or things that have been helpful to you. Keep them and sort out the rest that haven't been so good. You don't have to throw them away. You can just put them in another folder or another place where you sort the bad works. And by splitting the good works from the bad works over time, it will become a lot clearer to you what for you is good and what is bad and what you don't like and what you really like in works. Okay, let's go to the next point. That's knowledge. knowledge is a two-sided sword. It's important to have knowledge, but knowledge can also hold you back. For example, I have the habit to hide behind knowledge. That means that I rather would read 5 more books than start to work, because sometimes you get afraid of the working process, the creative process. So the first and most important thing that I want to put out is don't let the fear of knowing too little keep you from doing something. Just start it, like I said before, even if you think it's bad. So even if you don't know enough about the subject, you can still try to go into it. There is always beginner's luck, and when you don't have a lot of knowledge about a topic, you might reach some conclusions or goals or creative expressions that you wouldn't have with all the knowledge behind you. So start right away, but parallel to that, you should always invest your time into some knowledge and really understanding and learning and knowing what you're doing and improving your skill. Then, of course, learning by copying others works very well because they already have figured out solutions to the problems that you still search solutions for. And that means if you see a work where you think that the creative solution is really great, try to reconstruct it, try to remake that work as closely as possible, because this will teach you a lot about this, how this work has been created, all the problems that come with creating it that way, and you will analyze it more deeply because you have to look at the different details and have to figure out how this has been done. And this teaches you a lot about the process, a lot about the creative thoughts that went into it, and of course a lot about the artistic struggle, so you can, for example, for yourself avoid problems or find shortcuts to do it better yourself. But this shouldn't lead to yourself just copying others. This is just an exercise. It's not meant to just steal from other artists to make it your own work. It's just for learning. Exchanging with others is the best shortcut you can ever find. Talk to other artists, what they do, how they do it, why they do it. You can learn a lot from that, from their experiences, from the things they do. People love to talk about their own work and how they are doing it. So it's always also a good talking topic to get to know other creatives, other artists. And also this keeps depression away. This is, I think, a major thing also among creatives. You sit alone all day long, things don't work out, you don't feel happy because there is always other work that looks better than your own work. So it can become very depressing. And exchanging with others, seeing that others also struggle, but also seeing that others find nice solutions that you can adopt, makes it all worthwhile, and you're happier. And it's like all this kind of socializing is very good for your mind and for your skill. The next thing is keep your mind active and challenge it as often as possible. And I don't mean by that spoon-fed knowledge. So not these kind of online YouTube videos that you find, like you see here, like 5 facts about string theory. First of all, this is something you don't understand at all. So this doesn't really get your mind grinding. Because it's outside of your reach, and then the information is spoon-fed to you, so you don't even have to think about it. The better way is to find a book that is challenging enough for you so you can still understand what it says, but you have to think about it. So if you find a book and you have to read a chapter 2 or 3 times to really get what the author tries to say about that kind of art or culture or philosophy or whatever, then your mind is challenged, and maybe you even have to ask others or read about the interpretation of this kind of theory or concept or philosophy. And this is really mind challenging and really makes your brain a lot more active, and at the same time better at solving problems, especially creative, complex problems, which art itself also is. Okay, let's go to the next one. Adopting habits. It takes a very long time. It is really hard to adopt good habits. So really give yourself the time to do so. A new habit probably takes at least 6 months. So at that time, you should be really strict. If you want to have a new habit, be very strict with yourself in that time frame. Of course, you can adapt if you have to be like, in the beginning, we always set too harsh goals for ourselves and say, yeah, I do 10 sketches a day, or I do 20 photographs a day, or something like that, and you know you can't reach that. So you can talk to others, figure out what is a good rhythm, what is a good quantity, how to stick to the habits, especially when you know people who have this habit and are really good at having them. Ask them how they do it and then try to apply to yourselves. And like I said, be very strict with yourself in the first 6 months at least. Then the other thing, of course, is bad habits. They settle in very fast. It's the same like with body fat, for example. Like getting a slim figure is really hard. Putting on fat is really easy. The same is with habits. So always be on the lookout for bad habits and try to avoid them. If you see that you are slipping away from good habits or that you slip into a bad habit, try to get away from that. Try to find mechanisms for you that work, where you can, for example, reward yourself or punish yourself for something in a certain way. Where say, okay, if you didn't do that or you did it in a bad way, you can't watch Netflix this night, something like that. Or you get an extra candy bar because you did it very good, something like that. You will figure it out for yourself. You know what's good for yourself. Then, of course, it's never too late to change. And this is what I hear from a lot of people. I'm too old. Like, I don't know, I'm over 50, I'm over 60, I'm over 40, I'm blah, blah. I have this and that. I can't change anymore. It's all settled in. And this is bullshit. You can change all your life. And you know this is true because if something really, really goes wrong in your life or really, really changes, you know that you can adapt because you must adapt. For example, you get how can I say, thrown out of your job, and then you have to move to a different city and make new friends and adapt to a new city culture. If you're forced to do so because you lost your job, you can do it. So if you can do it in that situation, you can do it in any other situation too. Might not be that easy, but if it's something you really want to have, maybe it's worth at least trying to get there, or at least trying to get close. And there is no age where you can't adapt to some new circumstances or new habits. And of course, like I said, ask others for help and advice, especially if they already have the habits that you want to have. How do they do it? What are good tricks or tips or shortcuts that they can give you? Maybe they can even help you work out a schedule to build up that habit for you or with you. Okay. Then the next thing, of course, is you are what you do. And this is, how can I say, very true in the sense that, for example, every person is the kind of person that is originated in the family they come from. For example, my family was never very much into sports, so I am myself also not a lot into sports. It's for me like not a habit to go to a fitness studio or to go running or to do any kind of like weekly activity. But I know friends from families who have been sporty and they like sports themselves because they grew up with that. So that means you can train yourself to be a certain way. But if you see yourself and your habits and you try to analyze yourself and what you do every day, you see the person who you are. And that came from how you settled in and the choices you made for your life. The good thing is you can always change these choices. Important for that is the first point, listen to what you can actually do and like. So, for example, for myself, when I was young, I had a lot of ideas about myself where I thought, okay, I can do or I want to do this and that. And it all looks easy because when you look at people who are really good at it, they make it look easy. But then you come to the realization that actually you can't do it because it's just not in your person. Every person has their limits. Every person has their kind of abilities. So it's kind of good to figure out what you can actually do and what you actually like to do, and then try to improve in that. Don't force yourself to do something that you just can't do, even if it sounds like super exciting. Maybe it's just not for you, but maybe there is something that's perfectly for you and you will enjoy very much, but maybe you just don't know about it yet. Or you underrated it because you thought, well, it's like you didn't honorate it as much as something else. Okay, so the next point, like I talked about that already, like the 50% of the person's made from habits. The other half is genes, like what we have in our DNA. So we can't change that, but we can change our habits, even though that is very hard. The other thing I think already I said, so things change very slowly. Never compare yourself to the best, and this is some problem I always struggle with, because I always look at the best guys from a genre or women from a genre, and I think like I would like to be like that, and then I compare it to my own works and they look a lot worse because they spend a lifetime doing just one thing. I spent the years that I have had so far on this planet doing a lot of different things. I wasn't as focused, so how can I be that good? So comparing yourself to the best of the best is never a good idea. And always also to understand that change comes slowly. It takes time, it takes a lot of work, but it is worth it. Especially when you figure out what is important to you and what you want to reach, because the people who are really good at something, they figured out something that's good for them. That doesn't mean it's good for you or you should try to reach that. You have to figure out for yourself what makes you happy and then try to get to the point where this happiness or this state is achieved, where you are as good as you want to be at it. And the other thing is, like I said before, with the shortcuts about other people, if possible, try to find a mentor that can help you with this, because they can give you a lot of advice. They can give you a lot of shortcuts to things that would be very hard to you to figure out because you lack the knowledge and the experience to judge the situation. But they have both the knowledge and the experience, so they can point you into directions. It's just really helpful. And don't think that a mentor has to be older than you because you think experience comes with age. That's absolutely not the case. They can be the same age as you, they can be younger as you. Some people take a very short time, or they spend a lot more time in a lot more focused fashion on a topic than you did, although you're older than them. So don't go by age, go by how good they do it and how much they can help you, if they even want to help you. So it's always good to try to find a mentor. Okay, let's go to the next point. Be kind to yourself. That's very important. This is a very bad habit I have myself, to be very critical to myself. And this is very bad because it destroys your your courage to be creative and your creative flow, and also your easiness about your work. So being harsh to yourself is very bad for artistic work. So don't try to not be harsh to yourself. You can be harsh to your past self. That's great if you look at old work. So let them sit there for some months, maybe 3 months or 6 months, then go back and look at the works, and then you can criticize them and say, okay, this was crap, I don't like that, but that was very good. You can be harsh with that person in the past, but never be harsh with the person in the now time. Always be open to experiment and fail, because this gives you a lot more openness, and always be like happy and proud about yourself, to encourage yourself to do things, because errors or failings can always be changed and solved, and you can use them to improve yourself. Then the next thing is, don't judge others you don't understand based on your limited knowledge. And this is something that often happens, especially online, that people are very, very quick with just with judgment. The problem is that every person, no matter how much you learn in your life, you have limited knowledge because you can't just know everything about a subject. So, and this is what you see when people are smart and experienced and really knowledgeable in their area. This is why they sit down and listen, because they understand that even though they have a lot of experience and knowledge, they don't know everything, but they want to know more. So smart people sit down and listen, and dumb people stand up and shout because they are angry about things and about their own limited knowledge. So they want to feel strong by belittling others. So the better thing is sit down and listen, ask them, find out why they do it a different way. They might still be wrong. They might still talk crap or do bad art, but you can still learn something from them, or you can at least learn how not to do it. So there is always a benefit by listening to others. Then, of course, like I said multiple times, and I said multiple times because it's so important, give yourself time to improve and make mistakes. Improvement comes very slow. At the beginning, it goes very fast. You make big leaps, and then they get smaller and smaller and smaller. But you have to adjust your mind to understand that these smaller looking improvements are actually huge details when you zoom into them, and when you understand that these little things actually are the difference between average work and a good work and a masterpiece. These very, very small things. So if you come to the point where improvement gets very small, you should rather be proud of it and zoom in and see the big leaps that you make in these small details and try to analyze these small details. So give yourself the time to learn, and always, like I said, to make mistakes, learn for your mistakes. And if something is bad and it keeps being bad for a long time, try to ask others why you don't improve. Try to find a mentor, try to go to different sources to get rid of that mistake, or maybe you adopted a bad habit and try to improve it. The other thing, and that is really very important, is celebrate your own improvements and do so actively. And this is something a lot of people don't do. They hurt themselves by being very harsh to themselves and very critical of their own work. And when they improve and when something good happens to them, they don't celebrate it. You should really do that in an active way. Be proud of yourself. Even if there is a small improvement, you can celebrate that and say, hey, I did something great. I grew, I went over a step, so I'm now higher on this kind of ladder of improvement, and it was very hard to take that step. So celebrate that. That's very important. Also to feel good about your own progress and your own creative ways. Okay, the next one is have many sources. That's also important. Don't only learn from one source or teacher. And this is also what I want to suggest you with my YouTube channel. Don't just learn from me. Look at other channels and how they do things. Everyone has a different way to solve their problems or go about their creative ways. Because if you have just one teacher, first of all, this will limit your horizon. No matter how good this teacher is, even if this would be the best artist in the world, this artist only has his or her own ways and their own understanding, but the world is made of a lot more understanding. So you should look at other artists and other sources, even if those sources are not as good, even if they are new or not, or like bad or just different. You can just look at them and find something that might still be interesting. Yeah, so the next thing is get inspiration from different medias, cultures and subcultures. A lot of them have surprising answers. Try to also understand the why and don't limit yourself to their own explanations. And this is really important in the sense that still our learning systems are very centristic on the Western culture. We don't represent other cultures as well, like the different African cultures or Asian cultures. They are not very well represented in the learning structures. A lot of things are represented like everything comes from the West, which is not true. And these other cultures have very interesting solutions to the same problems or questions that we ask. The thing, though, is to understand that often they have explanations that either we could not understand because their cultural background and history is so different and we can't easily adapt to them. We can't just look into that philosophy, or that they the answers might be of a esoteric nature where, how can I say, they have an interpretation, but this interpretation is not really something that would be useful to your, how can I say, understanding to technique, why something works. So it's not broken down in a way that would be as analytical as we would do it. I don't know if this was the right explanation, but the thing that I try to say is sometimes it's hard to understand other cultures by the explanations they give themselves because we don't have the whole background and we didn't grow up there. So it's good to look at their solutions, but then also try to find an explanation that explains it from our point of view so we can go deeper into their understanding and really know what is going on. I hope this was a little bit clearer. Okay. Next point is lists. Lists are really good if you can handle lists, if you like lists. Otherwise, they might not be helpful for you at all. But if you can use lists in a good way, use them for your benefit. One thing, though, that you should look out for is don't have long lists. Really avoid long lists because they will push you away. They will push you into procrastinating. Because they look like something like a big mountain you could never climb. So a long list of tasks is always bad. The alternative to that is make a task list that has never more than 5 points, and then you write the rest of the tasks that are to be done sometime in the future on another paper that you store at another location away from your task list, and you can refill your task list from this other list. So in your mind, there are never more than 5 tasks to be done. And the other part is these tasks have to be written down in a way that can be finished in a short time and actually have a measurable goal. That is really important, because if you write something like, I want to learn landscape photography, this can take a lifetime. This is not a goal. This is not a task. It doesn't make any sense, and it will keep you away from actually doing it. But if you have a goal that you can finish, you say, I want to take 10 pictures, landscape photos, and I try to be as good as possible with these 10 pictures. This is something you can finish. This is something that you can measure, and this is something you can compare to another task that you do it another day. So this really makes sense and is something that you could look out for can be happy to do, and will not push you in a way where you think, oh no, this looks too big. I rather would procrastinate and take these 10 photos. So what else do we have? Notes. Notes are super important. So always carry a small notebook with you. And I really, really want to stress, have a paper notebook. Even if you have your smartphone with you and this little stylus and you can write on the screen, it's not the same as paper, because paper gives you more opportunities to do things with different materials. It's faster to open. It can't get lost in the same ways. And of course, it's much more personal, because this is your own writing with your own, the way your hand writes letters, the way your hand draws down little notes and figures and stuff like that. So paper is important because this makes it very individual to yourself. And having a notebook with you at all times also gives you the ability to conserve all the creative input and ideas, the details, sources, and contexts, and you can find at all times. So you are very far from having this kind of creative block in your head. When you have a book which with a ton of creative ideas in there and details and sources, you always have something to go back to and jumpstart your creativity. So it's a really great tool. Then, of course, you should always take notes from interesting conversations and lectures. That's important. So if you sit with someone in a cafe, you talk about creative stuff, they say something that's new to you or interesting to you, write it down. They won't mind. I think they will be, flattered that you want to take notes about what they know. And of course, with lectures also. And the important thing is to write it down yourself. Don't just copy paste it from somewhere. Write it down yourself with your own words, because this writing process is an additional medium to solidify it in your brain and remember it later on. Then another thing that's good is always try to observe actively your surroundings and write down what you see if you see something interesting. That can be even small things. A lot of inspirations come from that, and you can find a lot of interesting habits or how people clothe or what they do, or you can guess what their job is or where they are going next. So you get a lot of different inspirations. And after all, if you're creative or you do art, art is always about how people do things, how our culture works. So the better you really understand that, the easier for you is to create this, and especially create it in an authentic and believable manner. And don't ever expect that just because you are a human living among humans in a human society, you actually know about human society, because you don't. If you go out and actually look at people and what they do, you will see that you have missed a lot of details and a lot of things and a lot of habits, because we usually have a very small social circle and we only look at things that are interesting to us. So by actively observing our surroundings, we can look into other cultures, other habits, and other people's lives, of course from afar. But we learn a lot about how things actually work out and come together in our culture. So that's really important. Make simple sketches of ideas is also good. So if you have an idea for a photo or something, it doesn't have to be a super detailed sketch. You can have stick figures and stuff like that. You can just like sketch down a little composition or an idea, maybe make some lines and write some text, what the different elements are meaning. And this will give you also like a source to jumpstart your creativity, or to have like a collective of ideas for your next project. So that's really helpful. And another thing that's very important is write easy to understand sentences so you know what they mean later on. And this happens to me a lot, that I write something down and I come back and I look at the book like half a year later. I have no idea why I wrote it or where I wrote it. And when the sentence is not clear, it's lost because I don't know what it meant. So really try to be clear in what you write, and maybe subscribe a little bit to circumstance so you can decipher it later on. Okay, do we have more points? Oh yeah, network. You should always connect with others and ask them for opportunities to work together. That's important, and people will always be flattered by that. So never think you are going on their nerves and it's kind of not nice or something. People will like that, and you will get a lot of more opportunities if you just if you find someone interesting that you like to work with. Just ask them, hey, can we go for a coffee? I have some ideas. Maybe you want to join my project. Maybe I could do something for you, help you out, stuff like that. Or if you know people who would connect well, you could connect them to each other so they can work together and they will return that favor. So this is connecting people is always a good habit. Oh, there, I wrote the text wrong. Ask others for their ideas. This is what I meant to write. Ask others for their ideas, work style, habits, and such. People always love to talk about what they do and how they love it and how they are good at it and stuff like that. So asking people about their life and work and, I mean, creative life, of course, and work and their creative problems and how they solve them and stuff like that. It's always something that people like a lot, and you can learn a lot from them and you can find similarities. So this will always give you also an opportunity to connect to them. Maybe they talk about a project when you want to do something similar. You can ask them to work together with them, share your own ideas. Maybe something comes from that. Although I have to warn you right now, don't expect that every opportunity works out. So I would say 90% of the time it's like, yeah, let's do something together. This sounds really cool. And then you hear never again from that person or from that opportunity. And then there are the rare chances where something actually happens. So don't be put off or depressed by things not working out right away. Try to build up as many possibilities or opportunities as possible. And then the things that work out are still more opportunities than you have right now. The other thing is, and this is really hard for me, make a habit of talking to at least 3 new people at an event. I hate that, to talk to other people. I love to talk to other people if I'm introduced to them, and I hate to introduce myself. So I think that's the icebreaker is the big kind of thing for me. So if the ice is broken, I can talk to them all night long. So it's good to figure out maybe some icebreakers where you can start the talk with them. You can have some easy stuff like, are you also an artist here, or are you also into photography? And then they will say yes or no and talk about what they do. So yeah, and this will always like grow your network. You can meet some very interesting people and open up new opportunities. So that's very good. The other thing, of course, is, and this sounds contradictory to what I said so far about networking, is only share your best contacts and opportunities with people you know and can trust, because otherwise it will hurt your credibility. And I have had that a lot in the past, where I thought people are great and I knew them just from one evening, and then I connected them with other people who are important for my work life, and it completely failed. It didn't work out. And this makes me look unprofessional and hurts my contact to the person and the contact that I already built up with that person. So this is bad for me. So before you try to connect people to other people who are important for your own life, rather meet them a couple of times, maybe do a project with them, and then if everything checks out and they are really as good as they say and as reliable as they promise, then you can share them with other contacts. And this is also circling back to the first part where I said 90% doesn't work out. It's just like that. Sometimes you have to go there 10, 15, 20 times to talk to the same person and come back with different ideas, and maybe something happens. So it could be that you have to talk half a year to a person and say, hey, well, let's do like this photo shoot, or should we do an exhibition together, or let's have some kind of, I don't know, artistic project or something. And at some point, when they like you and they started to trusting you and stuff like that, they will invite you into their project and you can do something together. So this also takes time. Is there more? No, that was the last point. Okay, I think that was a lot. This was a really long episode. Thank you very much. I hope I covered interesting points for you. If there is other things that I should talk about that I left out, habits you think are worth talking about, please leave that in the comments. Also, if you like my channel, maybe subscribe to it. I do 2 tutorials per week. And if you want to support me even more and see more of these behind the scenes episodes, become a Patreon or a patron on Patreon, where you can also get my files with all the layers. You can get feedback on your own creations and a lot of other great benefits. Thank you very much for listening, and see you in the next video. Bye.